dominated by China and India. China more looking at your fine chemical components, your intermediaries, reagents and so on, and then India specifically looking at the API manufacturing. So that has created sort of a balance of power sitting in the East, and within Africa we do have a problem that we are dependent then on the low drive of the lowering of the prices of generics as such. Now, the South African government is very aware of the whole issues around security of supply, but also the high cost to the fiscus, especially with the high burden of disease of HIV, and where this is actually taking us in the future. The Ministry of Health is constantly trying to find ways forward to drive the cost down of the API so it's actually affordable to the taxpayer in South Africa. From the government side, we have launched a number of initiatives to get APIs off the ground. Most of you will be aware of them, but despite tax incentives, tax rebates, it was not possible to actually really get a big pharma company to say, yes, we will co-invest or we will invest in South Africa to look at API manufacturing. We, however, do have some API manufacturing facilities, of which Fine Chemicals is the one that's up and running. That is, Aspen has got some shares into that, and then there are also new emerging API manufacturing. So one is Chemical Process Technology Pharma, here based in Silverton, and Initio is one of the other ones that's looking at the flow chemistry process as such. So there are some activities on the local manufacturing of API as such. But the high cost of local manufacturing is actually really putting a stumble block into it. So when you look at your equipment, that mostly have to be imported. When you look at your process and project engineers, your construction companies that's experienced in GPI, API facilities, the waste regulations that makes it very difficult. It's good regulations, but it also has cost implications. And then the fact that we basically have to import everything. We do not have a strong chemical industry that can support it as such. Because of the high burden of disease with regard to HIV, the government mostly concentrated to see how low the price can be driven, and there was not a very strong focus on API as such. It's only since 2009 that there's a concerted effort to start looking at what can we do with regard to API manufacturing as such. But one of the problems is, apart from fine chemicals, we have not demonstrated the ability to actually really get into the process of manufacturing APIs. And then we also have a problem that researchers at university still following very much a silo approach, that it is my publication, it's my molecule, it's mine, and we need to break beyond that as such. Then we also do have a problem with making sure that we actually do have the relevant skills that is needed. So from DST side, there's a number of things on chemical industry that we are looking at. How can we enhance the chemical engineers as such, but we also need to start looking at your pharmaceuticals. What people do we need? What industrial pharmacists do we need for that whole process as well? And we need to find specific niche areas where we can bring in young people, where we can actually create opportunities for young people. But South African market is small. So we have to look, if we go into API manufacturing, we have to look beyond South Africa. And this is where the SADC local manufacturing and the African Union local manufacturing initiatives is becoming very important to us. That we can actually say to what extent can we then also create links with our the other countries in Africa to say, yes, let's look at, we will actually provide for these and these drugs, we can actually provide you with the APIs within the context of Africa, that we do not need to go outside of Africa. Now, in order to address this thing, there are basically two options. The first option we've been working on quite extensively, attract large API manufacturers to join us. We've not been very successful. The high cost investment, manufacturing costs and lacks of skills are actually sort of hampering it. If we really want them to get here with the incentives that we need to start looking at, it will be an interesting exercise to get all of that lined up and actually going. But apart from that, any big company investing here will actually need support to make sure that for the operational costs, price premiums and so on, to make sure that it's actually a viable company as such in South Africa. So from our side, we've been down this road. We were not really able to get a lot of traction as such. So the option 2 is we actually need to look at it aggressively, looking at a home developed technology strategy where we can harness what we've got available in South Africa and see to what extent we can actually gradually build up the capacity to do local manufacturing of APIs. In order to do that, we actually have to start at the universities, where we start seeing what abilities do we have to develop the synthesis processes for the different APIs, and then harness that, then basically create a virtual pharmaceutical company in that sense. Then once you've got all of this efforts together, then to look at developing drug master files that can be made available then for further for registration purposes, and then build the commercial pipeline as such. So I know it's a bit small, but this is just to sort of show you where we are. We're looking at, in this whole process of a platform that we want to put together, we're looking at involving the current API manufacturers or the ones that's up and coming. So it's fine chemicals, it's CPT, it's Initio, and whoever. I know there's one or two more who's interested in playing into that specific space. The main thing is to harness the capacity at the universities, then look at what role can the CSIRs play, but in this whole process, as you develop it, you need to bring in your regulators as well, so they can assist you with each and every step going forward as such. So what we suggest is that we will most probably utilize the Technology Innovation Agency program for their TIP program, Technology Innovation Platform program, where we will then create this API technology platform that will be then managed from the Technology Innovation Agency, but we will then get an institute to actually take it forward to do the actual day-to-day organization, the collaborations, the coordination of what needs to go forward. At this point, I want to acknowledge Rajan Naidu, who is currently with the Northwest University. He used to be the MD, acting MD of Belcom as such, and he was very much instrumental in developing this plan, as well as Neelis Geyer from the IDC. They were very much part of developing this whole plan going forward. This plan is sort of, DTI is also playing a very strong role to see what is necessary to build this capacity. I go back to the plan. So the whole idea is to establish the technology platform with partnerships with the universities, then demonstrate at the same time that we can actually do some local manufacturing. In order to do that, we need to start looking at utilizing a pilot plant, or get a dedicated pilot plant, or build or link up with the existing API manufacturers. Develop for specific drugs, identify those specific drugs that will make sense, and develop the drug master files and the technology packages that goes with it. It provides immediately international API opportunities. There's a number of companies that's already indicated that they would like to pursue that road with us. And it is not only your multinational pharmaceutical companies, but also some of the companies within China and India as well. And then after we've developed the drug master plan, we're looking at commercialization as such. The whole idea is then also to link back to the South African pharma companies that do formulation, to make this API then available for them. But it's very important in this whole process, we have to look at what it will take to make it still a viable opportunity, and at the same time also looking at the costs. So it's quite a daunting exercise to play around with all of the ideas. So the steps is basically looking at what we currently are doing at the universities. That is must be funded from either the NRF through DST or from big pharma companies to start looking what's happening there. Step 2 will be then to look to building this API technology development platform specifically at TIA. We're going to look at various things such as what is the synthesis processes, develop our own IP around that, and then once that is to actually go into the stage where you can manufacture small batches, so that is the third component is actually the pilot plant as such, and then once that is a drug file, it can actually then go forward. So phase 1, building at universities such as UKZN, University of Pretoria, Free State, UCT, NMU, NWU, Northwest University, and harness the ability there, manage from one central process as such. Then phase 2 will then actually be to look at doing that at other universities into that, and then also look at the dedicated GMP pilot plant as such. So this is just sort of the broad concept. We bringing the whole process more in-house to see how we can actually go forward. So that is on the small molecules. On the vaccines and biologics, I'm not going to do a long thing. That is just to take you through the specific value chain. As you will see, there are actually two major areas where South Africa is very, very weak. The one is actually the development of vaccines and biologics. From science and technology side, we are assisting and involved with BioVac for the development of GBS as a potential API that will go into their facility. At the moment they do have a facility, but it's not utilized as such. So GBS is being actually, with the assistance from the Gates Foundation, is actually going through the process of developing that as a potential vaccine. Then through the DST, through the Medical Research Council, is also looking at the development of broad neutralizing antibodies as a potential therapeutic for HIV, and eventually that either into a vaccine or into HIV cure. That is mostly based on CAP256, that is the antibodies that was discovered from clinical trials, and that shows a very good response to most of the HIV, a very broad response to most of the HIV virus complexes. We're looking at combining that with two other broad neutralizing antibodies to get a very broad breadth. So first of all, we're looking at testing it within clinical trials, but at the same time looking at to what extent we can do the local manufacturing of the API as such, of the biologics. So that involves two components. The one is a cell-based technology that we are negotiating now for the tech transfer for that. And then there's also a component on biofarming that is actually driven by the CSIR to start looking to what extent we can use your plant-based technologies in order to do local manufacturing of the antibodies as such. So that is, in order to feed this pipeline, you actually need to do the development component as such. Then on what is happening at BioVac, they're gradually going through a process of what they call backward integration. They first just did distribution, then they did the labeling. Now they are in the process of looking at the formulation and filling of the vials or the pre-filled syringes. And then the last component is actually the manufacturing of your specific the active components as well. They are limited to the extent that they are using conjugated vaccine technology, so we're also now exploring the possibility of using cell line technologies.